This is Wolfman Sam. I'm here with my friend John, and we are the Creatures of the Night. Welcome to the
Hello,
Creatures of the
everyone.
Night podcast. John, you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. Let's say first off, good to hear from you guys again, and good to be back on this podcast again. I thought, let's see, I made a list of things that we can talk about in today's subject. I'll admit, anytime I make a list of what we could talk about, there's no particular order we can go in. We're just gonna like talk
Oh yeah,
randomly
it's
about.
always off the
Yeah,
cuff.
I, I
Just so
guess
you
I
guys know.
guess before we were starting this podcast, we were rambling already. It's like, wait a minute, let's say this for the podcast. I'm gonna
Yeah,
continue what we want
yeah,
to talk
yeah. We
about.
always, we always. There are always things we talk about. We always we're starting to rehearse things before we start. That way we're not like,
Yeah,
And the thing,
I just wish I knew how to make vlog videos for that. But anyway, here's what we'll get started with. I was on social media a while ago looking up like random like horror like sites and horror like social medias. I came across this good one talking about horror movies that did not need sequels, and I feel like there's some like I can agree with, and there are some exceptions where it's like, okay, maybe a sequel was necessary, but this can go either way for some people's own like interpretation, whether they like the sequels or not. Depending on like if they're a fan of the franchise, I can respect why they love the sequels a lot for that particular reason. Like, for example, I don't think Jaws, Texas Chainsaw, Psycho, and let's see, Pumpkinhead, The Exorcist, especially Carrie, did not need
yeah,
sequels, and
Carrie.
The Omen.
I don't know what they were thinking. Cash. It was all about
Yeah,
the cash with that, and
pretty much. I watched it 2 years ago during Halloween of 2020, and I said to myself, this was really like a disappointment because the sequel was not. It did not feel like a sequel to Carrie. It felt like it was a '90s horror stereotypical film. I mean,
right, right,
and
and
also
even
Amy.
and even if they were trying to do a sequel to Carrie, you actually physically can't without doing a giant shark jump over the lore. Because at what point in the original, right,
Yeah,
did Carrie ever get pregnant? So you're telling
that's
me,
true.
and this is for people who have seen the 1976 original. If you guys haven't seen it, go watch it. Go absolutely go watch it. It's great. But spoilers ahead for those who haven't seen this. What was it 50 years old film?
Actually, it came out in '76, so it's around at least almost the 50 mark
Right,
with
yeah,
Carrie.
50-year-old film. But
Yeah,
but yeah, for those who haven't, who haven't seen it, um, there is no point within the film does Carrie ever become pregnant or ever show that she is pregnant because
right.
she immediately goes to the prom with Tommy.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
and after she kills her mom and the house basically collapses on her. So you know. To do that, you'd have to do like a Bride of Chucky zombie baby after death, but somehow living, and
Oh
then the
no.
teacher somehow found it. Like the amount of hoops that you'd have to jump to justify any continuity, but they weren't worried about continuity.
Amy Irving, who played Sue Allen, the teenage girl who was friends with Allen's character, she
Right.
came back in the sequel, and they really wasted her character. She's like barely in the. You would think that it was going to be like a similar like an H2O type of film, but no, she's just like there for a few minutes, and then we just come back to like these characters who are not that interesting because
Right.
what made the first Carrie like such a good, well, not just like the movie but the book, it was very relatable to anyone who was like a teenager understanding about how like harsh and horrifying like high school can be because of like bullying or even teenagers who are like
Yeah, and Sissy Spacek played that to a T. Like she
she
had such
really
a vulnerability about her.
she really felt real
And
to me. I'll
really
never
was
forget
the perfect Carrie. Now I haven't seen any of the remakes.
I did.
You've seen the first one, I know.
No, no, I saw the 2013 remake with
Oh,
Chloe
you've seen the
Grace
most
Moretz.
recent.
Yeah, I didn't see the 2002 remake. That was I think with TV film, I think, or something like that. Or
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and that's the thing. It's like it's already been remade three
yeah.
times.
I saw the
Two times. Two times. Excuse
right.
me. Two times.
I saw the remake when it came out with a girl I dated, and I really was not that impressed. I said to myself, they're really just doing it. It was a shot think of it
you
this way: it
can
was like the Psycho remake, shot for shot, but the only difference
yeah,
is
you can hear
it
the
was a
scraping of the scraping of the spoon on the barrel, just
yeah,
scrape.
it was just updating what was popular at the time with the modern day of technology of the cell phones. I'm like,
You didn't need that. You didn't
no,
need
I
that.
mean, I think Chloe Grace and Julianne Moore were not bad choices. I just think it was poor like writing direction. If they had like
Yeah,
maybe
and
tried to do some,
again, it's all about cash.
yeah, pretty much.
You
They
know.
really were just doing it for the paycheck. And I like Chloe Grace Moretz and Julianne Moore, good actresses, and I respect them
Right.
a lot. But they just the movie was just not that good. They like I said, good choices, but a failed waste of a project that should have been done better.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Also, also one thing on the list too that I came across for like other like films that did not need sequels. Hellraiser, I could see, but it's like okay, but Pinhead again, another is a supernatural to it,
Right.
and
I mean,
and
I
the
like Hellbound, and it was cool to see the
yeah
inner workings of hell.
yeah
So it doesn't need a sequel, but having it there doesn't hurt the
right.
lore. You
I
know.
just think I wouldn't be surprised if Clive Barker, just like Wes Craven with A Nightmare on Elm Street, he said he didn't want a franchise, the Hellraiser, but it could have been the studios
Yeah.
pushing him to.
Oh! Did you put Nightmare on Elm Street 2 on there?
Actually, I'll admit I took a picture on my phone of but still we don't have to like go by the list. We can say what's on our minds
Yeah,
though.
yeah. Nightmare on Elm Street 2 has to be one of the worst sequels, in
I
my
mean,
opinion.
I
Now
mean
I know
I don't
maybe there's
hate that
somebody that
film.
likes it.
Actually, my friend of mine likes the movie, but he admits like there's flaws to it. But I admit when I first saw it as a teenager, I didn't like it. But rewatching in like recent years,
Oh yeah,
I mean
it's
it's not bad.
Robert
It's
Englund is
just
still Robert Englund, and he carries
yeah
the film,
yeah
and
because
the
there was
effects are
also
still
like
there.
the movies had a cult following in recent years because of the gay themed subject at that time because
Right,
that was a
right.
rare thing you saw in horror
I
movies.
saw that, and
Yeah,
I
but I
kind
still
of
haven't seen.
giggled to myself. No
I have
offense to any of the LGBT
no, of course not.
community. I'm
No,
not trying somebody's triggered that's watching this. Don't you fucking
no.
gay
Believe
bash
me,
and all?
I'm not one to
No,
judge. I'm not
no.
one to judge, and I wasn't. I wouldn't say I wasn't like homophobic as why I didn't like it. I just felt like the film was like rushed because of the
Yeah,
success of the first movie.
yeah. Honestly, it didn't need it. But on that token, I'm going to talk about a positive sequel. I love me Dream Warriors. Dream
Yes, that was a
Warriors
good
is
one.
a
Yes,
great Nightmare
yes.
on Elm Street sequel. That
Right,
should have been two. That
right,
should have
right.
been two. If you
I think
wanted,
the reason why because what's her name? Heather Langenkamp said no to the sequel at the time because she didn't think there was because of Wes Craven agreeing with him not like doing a sequel was not necessary to A Nightmare on Elm Street.
right?
But then I guess after the second one didn't do so well for its time, they thought, okay, let's make a third one. Let's bring back Heather Langenkamp as Nancy, where she's an adult now. Now she's wait, what was she? Not a ther she was like a doctor in the
Doctor,
hospital.
yeah, yeah. I
She
haven't seen that
understood.
in a long time. It's been a long time.
Last,
But
last
the
summer
thing I
I binge watched all
remember
the
about
movies.
it most was, Robert Englund is still fantastic, and the performances are fantastic, and the kids, the concept is awesome. If you guys haven't seen it, check it out. Dream Warriors, and it's probably the most metal
Yeah,
of the Nightmare on Elm
yeah.
Street.
I like that that girl who was like dream of like where she's like beautiful and like looking like all like
Right, right.
emo. That was pretty cool. And I also like the wizard. Actually, here's a funny thing. My friend like loves A Nightmare on Elm Street. That's like his favorite. I mean,
Yeah,
I would
that's
say that
one of my favorite franchises too.
yeah, I would say it's his favorite. I would say like Godzilla's his favorite horror film. I think maybe Nightmare on Elm Street probably maybe his second, but don't quote me on that part.
Right.
He likes the franchise and the series, and he did a parody tribute video of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies where he parodied the wizard character because it was in the recent modern days. The joke is that this movie came out today, they would parody with Harry Potter.
Oh yeah. Well, that kind of if I could share a story of my youth. Yeah, I'm in my 20s, but I'll share a story of my teen years.
To use.
When I was a teen and I wanted to basically be a filmmaker,
Right.
And I think you'll remember these from. I had them on Facebook, and they should be still on
Yes.
Facebook.
I think when we met around the time, you showed me those videos of
Right,
your artistic filming
right,
things.
and
But go
they
on,
were
go on.
pretty bad. You know, they were ambitious, but pretty bad.
You
Um,
made a
co-
Metallica Nightmare on Elm Street with Freddy, like Enter Sandman, thinking, why was this never used in any of the movies?
oh, you talking about? Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. But anyways, to share a story, when I was a filmmaker, um, one of the things I would do is I had these vlog series where I would, I play Freddy Krueger. I play the Robert Englund version of Freddy Krueger, and I do like these silly vlogs all dressed up. I had one for Leatherface too, which I liked a lot more because I actually added a voice to the character, to Leatherface that no one else. If Leatherface had a voice, I don't know if I could still do it. I'll do it for you guys, for those that are watching. But
Actually,
I'll try my best. It's been a while.
I
But
meant the original
Leatherface, in my world, in my mind, kind of sounded a little like this, a little like Sling Blade, all very, very gravelly,
French fried
sounded a little bit like this, French fried mashed potatoes. But more or less, that was the impression. I when I was younger, I could do it a lot better. It's been a while since I've done that impression, but that was in my mind because I took elements from what Toby Hooper said of Leatherface being a big baby, and I was like, he's from Texas, he's kind of bulky,
Yeah.
and I think he would obviously have a Texas accent or a Southern accent of some kind, but he'd have to be a little scary sounding. So maybe he sounds a little bit more raspy.
The way I see it with Leatherface's background, he basically obviously dysfunctional crazy family,
Yeah.
and he probably was not. Maybe they never went to send him to public school. They isolated. They taught him to be a killer, I guess. But that's just my
well, the
theory.
beginning kind of explains that, but I don't know.
I don't know. I didn't like that one that much. The Texas
I do,
Chainsaw.
but like I said, that's where you and me draw Oz. I like the remake timeline, the 2003 and the beginning.
I like that one, but the one they made after that, the 2006 one,
Yeah. Or was it 2006? You're talking about Leatherface?
that was like a prequel, the beginning, which I just did not find that interesting. I found that one boring for some reason. And
On
I saw
on the topic though, considering we're talking about Leatherface, we were talking before the podcast began. We were talking about the newest Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
The fact that they're basically doing a Halloween Kills or a Halloween requel, where the main character, originally played by Marilyn Burns, Sally, comes back.
Oh, yeah, but
it's was 50 years later.
I think they were doing it more like H2O style for what I
get a Halloween, I get the latest Halloween. I get the Halloween Kills kind of vibe.
Right.
If they want clean slate. And I just wanted to mention, and I was going to mention this during the podcast, but I was watching this interview of the director, writer, and what gives me hope now, I'm not saying it's good because I've heard bad things about it. I've heard it sucked. I might
really
give it a
bothered.
whirl. But the director's heart seems to be in the right place because he's talking about bringing back to the grittiness of the original, trying to emulate the colors, make it colorful. Because the one thing I definitely agree with him about the 2003 remake and beginning was the colors are desaturated, and I like color in my horror films. That's why one of the reasons why I like the film Terrifier. If you've seen Terrifier, John.
I haven't seen that yet. No.
But for those who've seen Terrifier, know what I'm talking about. Check it out. It's like a low budget. It came out in the modern day, but it pays homage to low budget 1970s splatter flicks, 1980s splatter flicks, Texas Chainsaw Massacre type movie.
Right. I haven't really paid. The reason why I didn't bother with seeing the new Texas Chainsaw, because after the the 2013 film, which was, I think, a sequel. I don't know whether that was another prequel or a sequel. After that, I gave up on the series. I just was not interested. I still have never saw like the Leatherface film they made before this new one that came out from Netflix.
Right. Right. You know,
Because
and I thought it was a series originally.
Right.
When I heard Netflix, I was like, oh, a series? I said, okay, that'd be interesting. But that got me thinking. I said, if there was a Leatherface series, I can see it kind of working. If you do it right, you can kind of make it work. You know, if you're focusing on the family, the Leatherface family, whether it be the whatever name they go with, either the Sawyers, the original Sawyers, or the Hewitts.
Right.
If you focus on the family and Leatherface and him killing people, it can be interesting in a very visceral, bloody series.
Right. Because I think the reason why, in my opinion, like again, the original Texas Chainsaw, what made it so great and why I don't think it needs sequels because of the realistic like documentary films.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Is I totally agree. I
agree. Killer.
And for those that don't know, I like the second and the third one.
I've never seen the third one. I only saw
third one's pretty good. It gets back to the serious roots. It's with Day of the Dead remake guy. I forget his name. Slipping me. He was in the 2007 Halloween Rob Zombie remake, the black guy. I forget his name. You know him talking about bald. He's usually bald.
Ken Foray.
Yeah, he's in that.
He was also
and he's the highlight of it. He's great, man.
Right. And also, the one with Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger before they were.
Oh, that was such a weird one. That was so bad.
Oh my God. I only watched maybe 20 minutes of it, but I turned it off. I'm like, this is such
that was it was so bad.
It
looked like like a Tusken Raider, just
Chewbacca.
And there were parts of it, I remember it very, very well, but there were parts of it that almost looked like a fan film on YouTube.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about? Go back and watch that film and pay attention to just how low budget and how just grasping at straws that film is. And it looks like a fan film.
Right.
You know? It got me curious. I wonder if there's any good Texas Chainsaw Massacre fan films out there.
Oh, I've actually watched a lot of excellent fan films on the internet of.
Well, that's what I mean. They're good, really good fan films.
Especially people who've made up their own version of a. Well, because of again, because Hollywood's never going to make the certain Freddy versus Jason with Michael Myers.
Oh
yeah. Because it's a rights issue. Whereas us fanboys or fangirls will make our own version because we don't have to worry about all that crap.
Yeah, I'm telling you, the fans are going to be the future of movie making. It's going to be an independent industry, low budget.
I used to watch Blinky Productions back in the day. YouTube was just starting.
Dude, you read my mind. I was literally going to bring him up. I was literally going to bring up Blinky Productions. Productions.
That's funny.
And I was literally going to start talking about him. But you want to talk about him first?
Yeah, my first. I think I found the guy. I don't remember how I found him. I just remember looking up random YouTube videos of people who made up their own
in the early days of YouTube. I want to say 07.
Yeah,
I was 14.
Right. For me, it was around maybe 2008 or 10. In between those years, is when I found Blinky Productions.
Yeah, early YouTube. Good times.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Back when everybody was
a lot of low budget horror films for free on YouTube. Now it's all
that's
copyright.
it. I used to watch the Halloween sequels on YouTube at the time for free until eventually when YouTube caught up.
I remember one particular summer I would just spend on my downtime watching all these B 1970s horror films.
Right.
Like Cannibal Girls and The Gore Wizard and some of them were really, really bad looking back.
Right.
But as a kid I was as a young teenager, I was like, yeah, gore flicks,
I remember in high school, whenever I told somebody I was into horror movies, they would give me this weird look, he loves gore, guts, and crazy cannibal.
Yeah, some people aren't into it. You
Right
know,
now, and let me
some
tell
people
you,
don't get it.
right, not to get off topic, but what happened right now, recent events, that's the real horror movie. Like
Oh
nothing's
yeah,
more scary than
oh
horrors of
yeah,
life.
oh
Not to
yeah,
get political.
yeah. But you know, that's what I mean. It's not for everyone. It's basically
True,
the
true.
if it was a music genre, it would be heavy metal. It's the heavy
Right,
metal of the movie industry,
right.
horror movies, and that's why they go so well. Going
When,
back
when you
to
look at
going
when you look
back
at
to
like Alice Cooper's band, like
yeah,
he's got heavy, like some horror
yeah,
aspects,
yeah,
and
the Misfits. You know, it's like a tennis match. You know.
ooh, and he was in Prince of Darkness.
Oh yeah, Prince of Darkness is great, but we'll
That is
get
a
it.
good.
We'll
That
get
is a
into
great
that. I
movie.
just want to mention, just sort of the tennis match between heavy metal and the kind of if they were people, heavy metal would be the girl next door, or rather, the girl next door, and the horror movie would be the guy looking in and kind of too shy, and then they go over.
Well,
Hey, you
let's
want to
can
hang out?
I,
Sure.
let me ask you let me ask you a question.
Sure. What's up?
Whenever like if you watched an interview of a certain like a filmmaker or a heavy metal band, you feel like this like deep connection. You're like, I really
Yeah,
admire and adore
yeah.
this guy.
You
And
know, it resonates with people.
right, because especially
I love when the two mix. When you have a heavy metal soundtrack, you know, it's like Nightmare on Elm Street, Dream Warriors, Dokken,
right, right,
right? Dokken,
right,
complete heavy metal, and that movie particular was, you know, written at a time where heavy metal was at its peak, and it had a heavy metal music video with Freddy Krueger in it. Which funny
right.
story. Not to turn this into a musical podcast, but again, hand in hand. But
Go on.
according to the bandmates of Dokken, you know, and if you guys haven't listened to Dokken, give them a listen. They're awesome. They're awesome heavy metal band. They're not like a wannabe hair band, despite the look. Hey, it was the '80s. But there is a story during the filming of the music video, right? Um, the guitarist Lynch, George Lynch, was trying
Okay.
to get through the wall. You know, he tried to burst through the wall, but he couldn't because he was so stoned off of cocaine, right? And you know, because the bandmates have done cocaine before they started shooting. And
Yeah,
guess who provided the cocaine?
I don't know who did.
Robert Englund in complete makeup. He had it
Are
on the
you
Freddy
serious?
claws, and they were literally snorting. The
Oh my
way they tell
God.
it, they were snorting cocaine
I never
off
would
of
have guessed
Freddy
that.
Krueger's fingers. I mean, that's metal. That's metal, man. Like, you can't get that
Oh my
metal.
God.
I mean, don't do drugs, kids.
Freddy
but-
Krueger transporting coke. What, he wasn't transporting them in the sleep?
Yeah, yeah. No, well, they were getting awake. It's a wake up call.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, we were going to Prince of
Well,
Darkness.
I've read about people who like are either high the whole time, like any celebrities, or
Oh yeah, yeah.
or even like people who like. Actually, here's a little story I have for you. You know the singer Meatloaf,
Yeah,
who like recently passed away. Who was in
yeah.
Rocky
Rest in
Horror,
peace. Rest in peace.
I when I was 9 years old in 2002, I went to. Do you remember Westbury?
Yeah,
There was like a theater, like where like comedians or rock band musicians would perform there.
yeah,
I
yeah.
saw Meatloaf in concert there when I was 9 years old. But unfortunately, it's a sad story to say this, but it wasn't a good experience for me because
Yeah,
he
you know,
was
it's funny.
high, he was
It's
drunk,
it's
he got into a
funny.
fight with the fans, and
It's
he fell off the
funny.
stage.
My friend, you know, we have a mutual friend. You know, my friend Evan actually went to go see him around the same time, and he
Right.
said he was terrible too, and that was during his like drugged out, or alcoholism time.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
a good time.
Right.
Poor Meatloaf. But his album with Ted Nugent and The Bat Out of Hell, both 1 and 2, are awesome.
Right.
If you guys haven't listened to either of them, check them out. You can find them on YouTube. Give them a listen. Good for the ears. But
And the reason why we went to go see him that time because my sister is a huge diehard Rocky Horror Picture Show fan. She
Right.
loved me.
that's a great movie
Right.
too.
Unfortunately, I hate to disappoint people. I'm not really the biggest fan of that. I mean, I like,
To each his
I
own.
like,
I love the original. You know, I love the original.
I like the song in those films, but I just don't get the story. I'm like, what the hell am I watching? I just
Well,
don't get the whole.
you'd have to understand that it was an adaptation of a theater
Yeah.
play. It was a theater
Yes.
play
Yes.
first,
Right.
right?
Right.
And then it was a movie.
Yeah.
So it was like
And
a
also, actually, speaking of, this was not my original plan to talk about, but what the heck, since we're on the topic of Rocky Horror, did you ever go to the midnight showing where, they have.
I always wanted to go, never got a chance. Never got
I
a
did.
chance.
I did. So here's my story. Okay, 2019. It was around, I think, October. I think I went to Cinema Arts with a good buddy of mine. We went to go see, the midnight showing to see like what was all the hype and like why people like love to go to these midnight showings. Because I've heard stories about it, never been there.
Right.
And as we got there, like people are like, talking. We're waiting for it to start, and so this random chick comes up to me saying like, asking a question, "Have you seen Rocky Horror Picture Show live?" But thankfully we had the option of like, because if you're a I mean, I've seen the movie before, but if I didn't see it in a live audience, I was considered a virgin. I had the option of wearing a makeup. Like, no. And then people who like had the option of going up on stage, they had to like lose their Rocky Horror virginity by saying their favorite cartoon character in orgasm style.
Oh man.
Yeah.
It's weird. Yeah, it's
True
weird.
story
But
here. This is not
but
made up.
from what I've heard about the Rocky Horror experience, it's awesome. Like,
I guess.
it's
it depends
fan
on like if you're a big
it's
diehard
fan
sports fan.
interaction to the
Yeah.
deepest core.
And people like do Mystery Theater 3000 style, like poking fun at it.
Yeah,
and,
yeah, and
and
that's what
here's
being a fan
here's
is all
another
about.
funny.
Is just having fun, and
I think
just doing
my
what
only
you
complaint
love.
about that night was that, like, not only were they showing the movie, but they had like a reenactment of like people dressed as the characters.
Right.
Like
That's
show,
what they do.
but,
They
I
reenact.
mean, I get it, but it's like I think that was a little bit distracting. They should have just shown the movie. They wanted to do a reenactment. Do that at like a local theater play.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I would have loved to see it. Whether
Yeah.
it's a reenactment in the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, going
Let's
back
just
to
say-
when I saw Star Wars, for those who haven't seen the first episode, I shared a story where I went to go see the first sequel of Star Wars. The Force Awakens.
Force Awakens.
And I went to go with a midnight show with a friend, my good friend Evan, and everybody was dressed up, and
Right.
it was Star Wars fans, young and old, and the theater was packed. And the movie was okay. It was essentially a remake of New Hope.
When I first saw it, I thought it was okay, but after like watching it like in later years on multiple more viewings, I kind of don't have the same hype for Force Awakens like I did. With the first.
Yeah. Well, that's it, and we were hopeful, it left us kind of hoping.
Yeah.
Little did we know about the
Then
future.
the next two, like the rest of the sequel trilogy was just like duds in my opinion. It's like,
Yeah. That's another story.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when I saw it, went to a midnight showing, everybody was dressed up, and the theater was packed, and it was like a rock concert.
Oh yeah, it was.
The fan
Same with me.
reaction, when the credits, when the credits were, when the previews were starting, people were getting restless.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
people were like, "This is bullshit! Start the movie! Start the movie!" And the first note, that first boom, but just,
I'll never forget when I saw it midnight showing with some friends of mine around the Christmas season. Before like we saw it at a midnight show, people were like walking out before saying like, "Oh, it was awesome," and we went in. And that was the first like, midnight showing I ever went to.
When I first
theater.
saw
Like you
it,
said, people
I
are
thought it
dressed
was
as the
awesome,
characters
but it was
Yeah.
really down to the anticipation of not having anything Star Wars related in a long time, and the fan interaction. I mean, the fans really, in my view, and this is a giant thank you to Star Wars fans and to fans in general. Thank you for making a typical what could have been a typical regular moment into an awesome rock concert of fandom. Thank you guys so much.
I remember when we were watching the movie, people were like, anytime like Carrie Fisher, Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill,
Right.
Actually, I don't remember like when after when well again spoiler alert right here. After when Han Solo dies, when they finally showed Luke Skywalker up until the end, say for the next movie, I don't remember people applauding that coming to my mind because I think because we were like very
No, I
distraught
remember
about
everybody was quiet.
yeah
Every
because everyone was distraught
absolute
about
silence because they
yeah
were, and it wasn't like a like I can't believe they did it. It was did you really just kill Han Solo? Like
yeah like
it was like
I had the same
it was like
reaction too.
it was like watching somebody take your favorite toy
Yeah.
and smash it and then smile at you,
Right.
like what you gonna do,
Right.
and you're just like, really,
But
like,
but it was obvious because Harrison Ford like is not interested in doing like Star Wars anymore at this point, playing like Han
well,
Solo.
unless they give him money. He's in
That's
it for
true.
the money, and there's
Yeah, that's
nothing wrong
true.
with that. I mean, fish gotta swim, birds gotta eat, to quote Finding
Pretty
Nemo.
much. But I read that I remember I think it was around that time when Force Awakens came out. I was reading about how he said he wanted Han Solo to die in Return of the Jedi, but George Lucas would not allow that.
Right.
Could have been it, especially how like the way like I remember even Mark Hamill said in interviews at times where after the way Empire Strikes Back, they thought they were really going to go in like the dark direction where that Luke was going to be the new Darth Vader, or that he was going to kill like either Han Solo or the
That would have been
princess.
interesting.
It could have
Or
been,
they
but
could have
I guess
adapted any of the expanded universe. They could have brought in Mara Jade. They could have
yeah,
told the love story of Mara Jade and how she basically fell for Luke and had Luke's kid and blah blah
right.
blah. And
And also, actually, what's even funny is like Mark Hamill was like said like trying to suggest like all these like great ideas of a possibility of the next movie, but George Lucas said to him, "No, no, 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 I don't want to go in that direction." And Mark was like, "Oh," like
yeah,
annoyed at,
yeah.
and it's
And
and
I
he
feel
was
bad. I feel bad for Lucas because what again. I mentioned this. I think I mentioned this in the first podcast. I'm almost positive. So I don't mean to repeat subjects, but from what I've heard about Lucas, was he was basically strong armed, or at least both strong armed out of his own script, and
yeah,
promised that his adaptation was going to be what was going to be on film, and then the
yeah,
studio took his company from him.
Disney.
Yeah, Disney took his company and they took his script, they threw it out, and or
Yes,
they
yes.
adapted some of it, but they threw most of it out.
I actually here's a little fact about me. Back in college, when I took a public speaking class, around the time when The Force Awakens had just came out, I did like a speech in front of my classmates talking about the history of Star Wars with a group of people, and I remember like we were talking about that in conversation. We got up together, like doing our research and trying to gather up all our information to combine.
Right.
And the guy who was like helping out with the presentation said the same thing about when George Lucas like sold the rights to Disney. Apparently, like George Lucas had like these original ideas for how he wanted to do a sequel trilogy to Star Wars with the originals coming
Right. It
back,
was always kind of planned.
but Disney, when they bought the rights, they basically burned down those scripts, and it's
Yeah.
like
They were basically like Thanos with the Infinity Stones.
yeah, pretty much.
Just I am inevitable.
That's a good. That's a good
King.
way to put it. Thanos just destroyed George Lucas's original
Yeah.
Star Wars.
I
sequel
think there's a
for
meme
Disney.
of that somewhere
Yeah.
where they collect where all the Infinity Stones are all the studios. I've
Right,
seen
right.
it. It's funny. But
That's
yeah. But anyway,
oh my god.
to kind of cap this podcast off, do you want to head into Prince of Darkness? We were going to head into Prince.
Yes, Prince of Darkness. That I mean, I'll admit it's been a while since I've seen it, but I saw it a while ago. But what I remember when I saw, I'm like, oh my god, this film is like awesome, phenomenal. And
Yeah,
again,
seriously
nope,
underrated, guys.
nope.
If you haven't seen John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness, give it a watch.
Actually, speaking of, wait, hold on one second.
He's
Wait.
going away, but yeah. But yeah,
sorry to leave the podcast for 5 minutes. 1 second.
that's all right. That's all right. That's all right. I'll wait for you. I'll keep it going. But anyways, to basically spring off of John's whole thing with Prince of Darkness, Prince of Darkness is just an awesome film, supernatural, having to deal with the second coming or the coming of the Antichrist or the Devil's son, and there's some
Sorry
time
about that,
travel
everybody.
involved.
And as
I'm
Arnold
getting
would
all
say,
into
I am
spoiler
back.
territory.
And
So,
here's my Prince of Darkness Blu-ray.
oh, you got it. Okay, there you go.
Yes.
It's
And the
with
reason,
Donald Pleasance, of course. Donald
yes,
Pleasance
yes,
returns. Or not really returns to Halloween, but
no,
returns in the Carpenter,
yes,
pool. But yeah,
yes,
Prince of Darkness is basically one of John Carpenter's best films. It's John Carpenter to a T. Great music. I'm always a big old OST guy. I love me a good soundtrack. And the atmosphere is in it.
yes,
And to top it all off, one of my favorite singers, Alice Cooper, is not only
yes,
on the soundtrack but in the movie as one of the devil's or the devil's son's followers.
right,
He's like a hobo, and he's just so
yeah.
great.
I,
And
I
to
like,
mention, a scene that I find kind of funny because I actually just watched it pretty recently. I rewatched it. Um, in his scene where he kills this kid, the kid happens to be listening to Alice Cooper, Prince of Darkness. The
right,
song,
right.
like it's just a little Easter egg, and it's kind of a funny little nod. Hey, Alice Cooper's killing a kid while the kid's listening to his own song. It's a funny little nod. I noticed Carpenter kind of does that to go off Halloween 3. He did that with having the Halloween movie in Halloween 3 on the TV. But for those of you who haven't seen it, see that as well. Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. Give it a watch. I know John's not the biggest fan, but
no. Sorry, guys.
that's why
Right.
that's why you asked the Wolfman, because Wolfman Sam, not only do I have my own opinions, but everybody does.
We all do, but that's okay. It's all good, bro. He's still my
But
brother at the end of the
anyway,
day.
Prince of Darkness. Is there anything you would want to add about?
Well, I will admit, it's been a while since I've seen it, but from what I remember, like watching at the time, I was like so like. The thing I love about Carpenter's film, he really can drive you like deep into his stories and what he's trying to like.
Oh
prove
yeah,
in his
the
point of
atmosphere
view.
is just gripping
Yes, and of course,
for lack of a better term, darkness.
Donald Pleasance again, awesome.
Yeah, Donald
amazing.
Pleasance is awesome.
He was great. He was great in this film as he was in Halloween, and
Yeah,
I mean, Carpenter's like part of the reason like why I'm a horror fan because of as a little kid. I don't know if I mentioned this in the last podcast, but here's a little background story. As a little kid before, I think this is gonna be a big shocker. I was not into horror films. Horror films used to scare me. I was afraid of Michael Myers as a kid. As a little kid, when I saw the original Halloween as a kid, it freaked me out as a kid. I couldn't like watch another horror film for a while. And so then when I was a teenager, when I was finally over my fear of horror movies, I watched all the Halloween sequels, Friday and Jason and Pinhead films, Chucky, etc. And the list goes on. And
the rest is
then, of
history.
course, and not only was I also getting to the Halloween, I was also getting to like John Carpenter's other films, like the thing. My dad loves The Thing. That is his favorite horror.
Yeah, it's
sci-fi.
a great film and a great remake.
Oh, it is. It's the best. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I also saw like The Fog, Escape from New York at the time. Well, even though it's not a horror film, but still, Escape from New York is
Basically,
awesome.
we went down the list of Carpenter's films.
Yeah,
I mean, there's some films
yeah.
I haven't seen, like the Village of the Damned remake and the
I didn't see that
Vampires.
either.
I haven't seen that either.
I had that movie. I've never seen.
But
Vampires.
he's great, and not only did he influence me when it comes to, in wanting to be a filmmaker. Maybe not succeeding at that, but wanting to be a filmmaker. Definitely John Carpenter, and I've always loved the fact that he does the soundtrack, because I'm a big old music guy. I love me some rock and roll and some heavy metal and just music in general mostly.
Right.
And the fact that like the director and writer is doing the music, I was like, kind of got me in the inkling of like composing.
That's why I think Halloween was so scary. Is that music? Every time I heard that.
Oh yeah.
Theme, and anytime I heard that song as a little the theme song, I was just like such in like a panic and on the edge of my seat thinking, oh my god, Michael Myers is gonna pop up and
yeah. And guys, there's a documentary you could find on Netflix. If you have Netflix, called The Movies That Made Us.
Yes, I watched that.
It talks all about the behind the scenes of Halloween, and basically how it was just so low budget that they didn't even think it was gonna do well, and then it just became
No,
this
no.
big
I think what
sensation.
I think even though despite like Halloween, I think before that, I mean it wasn't the first slasher film, but I think that at that time it made like the slasher genre like more
Yeah,
popular because of the low
to
budget at the
to
time.
do a comparison again.
Black Christmas
Yeah, to do it. Yeah,
and
Black
Texas
Christmas is
Chainsaw.
one of the first. Well, next to Psycho, but to do a
Yes,
comparison
yes.
to music again, here I am pulling from my music, but if the Ramones are basically punk rock personified, if they basically made punk rock what it is today, right? You know, that's essentially what Halloween did for the slasher movies. Is it
Right.
made it kind of mainstream? It had a formula, and there were there were bands. There are movies. There are movies that came before that pioneered that, much like the Stooges did for punk rock. You know, Iggy and the Stooges. But yeah, so there are movies before that, obviously, but it wasn't until Halloween that I think really we came out of the 70s and we started to go into the 80s slasher genre,
Right.
and then you have Jason, Freddy,
Yes.
you know, the list goes
Absolutely.
on and
But
on and on.
actually, a friend of mine once said how like even though Nightmare on Elm Street is a slasher, but there's a little bit more like in depth to it than just being like a
Yeah,
slasher in a way, which I can
well,
definitely see that.
for those that don't know the behind the scenes, it was actually inspired much much like a lot of what Wes Craven writes. It was inspired by news articles,
Yes,
and there
about people
were
who actually
these
died in their
kids
sleep.
in Cambodia that were basically dying in their sleep, and they were saying
Yes,
this man, I don't know if it was Freddy, but something was coming to
right.
get them on upon their death. You know, sad, sad stuff. But you know, it inspired him to make
You know,
Nightmare on Elm Street.
yeah, it's funny. Before I saw Nightmare on Elm Street, I knew who Freddy was, but as a little kid, before I refused to watch Nightmare on Elm Street
Yeah,
because
well,
of the idea of
Nightmare on Elm Street, for lack of a better term, was my first love when it comes to horror films. It was
right. Well,
my
for
first
me,
film. I was 14 years old. Yes,
yeah, for me it was
I
Halloween.
guess that's a late bloomer.
Right,
But I was
that's
14 years
okay.
old, and I always. The funny thing is, when I was younger, is I always had an interest in the world of horror, and I always kind of was interested in the characters. But when I was younger, like 10 years old, or 8 years old, I was too frightened of it. But I'd still
The
write fan fictions about that Avenger style team up with all the
yeah, the
killers
the,
and
only,
psychopaths.
the only horror I really watched as a little kid were just like the black and whites of like silent films and
Gremlins, I guess,
Universal
for
Monsters,
little
King Kong.
kids. But
I did
yeah,
like
not to get off topic, but Nightmare on Elm
right,
Street was my first,
right,
and the rest is history. After that,
right,
it was
right.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
It was the
It's
list
it
goes
took me a
on
little
and on and
while
on.
to get
If I
over
could
my
name
fear
it,
of
we'd
horror.
have a whole like three other episodes,
Yeah,
four other episodes.
yeah. Maybe in the future we can talk about like our history of like horror, how we got it, and
Yeah,
not just like what scared us, like what got us into horror. Like what was the
yeah.
first horror film we watched as a little kid where you weren't supposed to watch it, but you watched and snuck around.
Well,
Sorry, mom. Sorry, dad.
and I mentioned this in the other, in the first episode, our first episode, is my dad actually got me into Nightmare on Elm Street. He was the one saying,
Oh,
oh, it'll be fine, let him watch it, let him watch it. My mom was like, no, he's
not.
little, no, let him watch it. And he says, let him watch The Entity too. You know, 'Cause that was my dad. My dad, I have to thank for inspiring me, or at
Sorry for
least
the
putting
background.
that in my brain of discovering horror films and action films, and
Right,
basically changing my life for forever
right.
as a fan.
Actually, not to get off topic, but my dad showed me a YouTube video recently. Somebody at his job loves horror movies, and he made a YouTube video showing his like horror basement. He's got like memorabilia. He's got like some action
Right,
figures and
right.
some movie
I
posters.
have, I have. Now you guys can't see it, but behind me is autographed pictures of Wes Craven,
I always,
Toby Hooper and
I
Joan
always get
Crawford.
jealous every time
Whether
you say
they're authentic, real signatures, I don't know.
as
I never
as
actually
as
checked. But the fact that they're on my wall and is awesome, you know.
as a little side joke, guys. Here, every time you like, I see those photos, I'm jealous. Like, oh, you son of a gun.
But yeah, I mean, compared to other horror fans, I probably don't have as much stuff
Right.
as
I mean, for
most.
me, I got like basic things. I got like a
Yeah,
couple of action figures of the Universal monsters. And I got like,
yeah,
it's mostly like the collection of horror films I have. I don't have like a whole like I have a couple movie posters I got at like at like
yeah.
what you call it at
Yeah,
fairs.
my brother had gotten me the Night of the Living Dead poster, basically the
Yeah.
same poster I had when I was 14.
Right.
Um, you know, on my wall
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yep.
Um,
Horror films have stood the test, and they'll probably be in my life till the day I die.
yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah,
the things we
and it's
love.
funny how as a kid growing up, my not being into horror movies, I used to be afraid of horror film, but like I said, now when I watch like the news, that's the real horror movie. And what happened
Yeah,
recently with
yeah,
COVID, that's the real
yeah.
horror film.
And that's the funny thing. Like some people think like if you watch horror films or if you enjoy horror films, uh, something's wrong with you. I said no, you're just a
Not really, no.
fan,
But
and
actually, horror really has a lot more to offer than people like realize. Because
yeah,
people think horror films are like slasher films with a bunch of like stupid teenagers having
yeah,
sex, drugs. I'm like, that's not
yeah.
true. That's
I
bullshit.
mean,
Because
we could talk about why we love in depth why we love horror films probably in the next podcast.
here's an example right here. Prince of Darkness. This is not a This is like more of
Supernatural.
like
It's a,
supernatural, satanic, and also
yeah,
again, no answers. It's about because Carpenter is an atheist, but he has like admitted at times that that the supernatural and the afterlife is an unknown mystery, which that's very true. That's
yeah,
something I can agree with.
yeah,
And again, there's an example right there. When I watched an interview with Carpenter, I'm like, oh my god! Not only do I love this guy as a filmmaker, I can like connect with this dude. Like maybe not agree with everything he says, but I can like see how
yeah.
open-minded he is.
There's certain elements that you can
Yeah,
reconnect.
and also like not. I also want to like talk about how like I watched an interview with him he did with. I don't remember who the interview was, but I remember when he was talking about his history of like his biography when going to film school, dropping out, and like making like a living as a filmmaker, having no connections at the time, doing indie films until he got his recognition. And when he did Halloween, here's a fact. You've seen the Hammer films, right? Like Peter Cushing.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen most of the Hammer films.
Before Donald Pleasence was offered Dr. Loomis, he wanted Peter Cushing or Christopher Lee as Loomis because he was a huge fan of the Hammer films.
I can see Peter Cushing.
But Lee was rejected the script because he hated the script, and Cushing said he felt like he was too big of a high profile actor because he was in Star Wars the year before, and that's a
Yeah,
bummer because that could. I mean, I do love both actors; they could have been good choices, but really, Loomis, Pleasant is Loomis.
yeah, yeah. I mean, unpopular opinion. I like Malcolm McDowell as an actor, and he was an odd choice for Loomis,
He was okay. He was
but he
okay.
was okay. But
Yeah.
he's not Donald Pleasance.
No, but you know what it is again because it's a remake. He's trying to make it his own and not copy what was done already.
Yeah, you know,
And
like
hey,
I said,
I'll give credit to Rob.
I'm not usually a remake fan. I love
Me neither,
me.
but I give credit to Rob Zombie for character actors. I really do. That's
Yeah,
one thing I admire about the guy.
yeah. Well, I'm a big Rob Zombie fan,
I know,
as
I know. That's okay.
as you know. But
Yes,
um,
that's okay. It's all good, man.
I
But
for those that don't know, I own just about every movie.
that's
He's
cool. That's
got,
cool. I admire.
and
What do you think?
I hope
What do
he's
you,
doing a Munsters remake. And
yes. What are
I
your
hope
thoughts on that?
I hope it's good. I hope he keeps the
Same.
tone genuine and lighthearted. I hope he doesn't bring his Rob Zombie flavor. I don't
Yeah.
want Lily Munster showing her tits or swearing or dropping F bombs. I don't want
No, I'm
that.
just kidding.
You know, Sherry Moon Zombie is beautiful. You know, she's a beautiful actress
Yeah.
and she's a very good actress. But
Yeah.
I don't want like a Rob Zombie flavor to
Yeah.
Munsters.
My dad's coworker from his job who loves the horror. He says the same thing about like a little bit skeptic, but as long he said
You
as long
never
as Rob
know.
Zombie does not.
I mean, he's a
Yeah.
huge fan, so much so that he bought the car Dracula
Yeah.
and wrote a song about
Well,
it.
did you ever like see his like MTV Cribs episode where he's
Yeah,
like
no,
showing his
I've seen that.
house?
Yeah.
That was
I'm
pretty.
jealous of his
Like I
crib.
said,
I don't
even though
even
I'm
think
not
he
the
still
biggest,
has that crib, but who
that I don't
knows?
know either. But still, that was pretty awesome. And even though I'm not the biggest fan of his, but I do again. I think he's a cool, chill.
Yeah,
Like
I would like to hang out with
yeah,
the
definitely like
zombies
hang
for
out,
sure.
maybe have a
Both
drink
of
with
them. They
him
both
and
seem like
have dinner
awesome,
and talk about
awesome
horror
people.
movies for hours.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, but anyways, on that note, I think we should end it here. It's almost 4 o'clock here. I think
Okay.
we've been going for an hour.
So yeah, I guess it's gonna be a shorter podcast. And actually,
Yeah, well,
before we end it,
I'm gonna try not to make these 2 hours because I don't want you guys out there watching to get kind of bored of us. So
right.
I think we're gonna end. I think we're gonna end it here. So I've been Wolfman Sam. This is my buddy John. We are the Creatures of the Night. Thank you for joining us on this podcast. I'll see you guys later.
See you next time, guys.